welcome. Look, so let's talk about RMS. I want to talk about RMS because I've got a special technique that can help to take your production, your masters to another level. Professionally, of course, that is, right? Just right from home, using your own ears and the basic tools that you've got. So let's get into this one that I'm working on right here, mastering it, or dare I say remastering it within FL Studio Mobile. Let's dive in, okay? So first of all, what is RMS? RMS means the root square mean, and what it is essentially a mathematical equation that takes into consideration an audio signal's quietest and loudest parts. Essentially, we're talking about the dynamic range of your audio signal, all right? And as you see here, we're looking at the RMS feed within the FL Analyzer, okay? And I'm going to give you some tips. Like I said, towards the end, I'm going to drop an actual secret technique that you can use to take your productions to another level, or at least the next level, right? Okay, so it essentially, RMS measures the power of an audio signal over time. So let's look into sampling, all right? Because this is very important to understand what RMS is, and essentially this analyzer tool, whether it be LUFS, True Peak, Peak RMS, either way, we need to understand more about sampling. Okay, so resampling is converting a digital audio signal to a different sample rate. So a resolution can remain the same, so maybe 16-bit, 24-bit, or 32-bit resolution is fine. Now, sample rate is measured in hertz. And it refers to the number of samples taken in 1 second. Most digital audio we hear anywhere around the web or media devices is usually putting out 14.1 kilohertz, okay? Now, we'll talk more about the Nyquist frequency in the future, because that will definitely go deep, but we definitely want to learn more about sample rate and sampling as we dive in on that video. So definitely, guys, drop a comment if you want a little bit more on that. Let's dive in a little bit more again and continue with sampling. So upsampling is interpolation. Okay, so for example, if you go from 44.1 kilohertz up to 48 kilohertz, that is interpolation, upsampling. Downsampling is decimation, right? Of course, a lot of us are familiar with some tools that do decimate our audio. So downsampling is decimation, and what that means is, let's say you're going from 48 kilohertz down to 44.1 kilohertz, all right? So downgrading your sound. Let's dive in again to the analyzer plugin right here, right? And let's look at these numbers. As you see, we have the peak, and let's also look at, we got the target. So let's look at target. We can adjust the target to have a visual indicator of where, of these frequency, the decibel levels, okay? So that line is just an indicator, right? Now, if we look at the RMS, peak, and true peak in the analyzer, we can use these tools to reveal more information about our mix. So look at peak as the maximum volume, integration is the average, okay? So if you look at this, we have integrated, we have peak, that is, and the range would be the maximum minus the minimum value. So that is essentially the dynamic range that we're looking at, okay? This analyzer tool is really useful. And guys, whether it's FL Studio Mobile or some other platform, you could still use these tools, this knowledge, to again help to take your productions to another level. So RMS again is the root square mean, right? And it's a calculation over a period of 50 milliseconds. So that's the time window, right? It's a moving average that evens out transients, or the peaks, to better represent loudness, all right? When looking at highly dynamic songs versus songs with more consistent levels, you'll find a few key things, all right? So tracks without many quieter parts are typically suited to have lower RMS levels. I guess if you think of it, they're just constantly coming at you with more and more loudness. So the overall level would ideally be lower, right? Whereas songs that have maybe a bold or maybe a more intense sound, more dynamic range, more punchy, louder drums that come in and cut out, and maybe a lot of drops, those could be better suited for higher RMS levels. So guys, take into consideration how you're using these tools and this information with your productions, all right? Are you producing songs that are loud and consistently loud? Well, then if you are, then your RMS levels will ideally be a little lower. than somebody who's making more dynamic music that has big drops, maybe a huge snare drum and then suddenly nothing and some quiet vocals. Those ones will typically have a higher RMS level, right? Now, looking at peak and true peak, there are a couple of differences between these two, and really it's that true peak is a more accurate version of peak, right? And that's because of upsampling or interpolation. So essentially, it uses interpolation to display intersample peaks that can occur as a function of resampling. Again, earlier I mentioned resampling. Guys, if you have to rewind, please do it, right? Resampling is upscaling, okay? Is upsampling, right? So that is going from a lower sample rate to a higher sample rate, right? And so the peak, true peak, gives a little more insight into what's happening with interpolation with intersamples, okay? That means that the actual sample data does not always represent the true peak levels after a waveform is constructed from it. So we can use true peak and peak very much similarly, but use them both and kind of see where your dynamic range may vary, and that could help you understand perhaps if your music is a little louder than you want it to be, or perhaps a little softer than you want it to be, okay? Let's talk about this secret technique that I mentioned earlier, okay? Again, professional mixing, mastering techniques to get your productions to the next level, okay? So if you look at the difference between RMS and the difference between the maximum peak level, it will provide a good approximation of the amount of dynamics in your master. So let's let this one come back around and we'll quickly take a look. So let's refresh this. Let's go to true peak. And so far we're sitting at about minus, as you see, minus 6.9, okay? Minus 3.8, minus 3.8. And this is a lower part of the track in terms of the overall volume. And then if we go to RMS, we're probably close to maybe 10 or so, 7 to 10, 6 to 10 decibel differences. Let's listen to this part here. Okay, minus 11 decibels, minus 10.7. Guys, as well, this track is one that I'm doing the remaster for within FL Studio Mobile. The link will be in the description to my Bandcamp if you guys want to check this out. And it is part of the Contact Project collection, all right? So I'll drop a link there. So minus 9.5. Let's check this out as the true peak, okay? So minus 2.2. So it looks like we're sitting at around a difference of 7 decibels. So the secret here is to maintain at least 6 decibels of space or a gap between the peak and the RMS levels. All right. Again, one of the secret ways to use RMS and peak is to maintain roughly 6 decibels of a difference between your peak level and between your RMS to make sure that you're in a reasonable range, okay? Now, we've talked about LUFS mastering several times. I'll link that video right now. As a matter of fact, there are at least 2 of those videos that we went deep into LUFS mastering. So guys, in closing, I would say it's simply important to achieve a balanced dynamic range in your mix. Okay, we can look at so many tools that can help us with this. Of course, you can use tons of tools. You can look at your ranges here, and you can look at the peaks, and of course you can look at the RMS, which is what we're discussing today, right? Ask yourself what the quietest parts are and of course the loudest parts are, right? You can answer that question, and so can the tools with these visualizations right here. They can help you a lot, right? There's so many things you can do. You can look at the decibels at the X amount of seconds. It's actually so fantastic, this analyzer tool. I definitely would recommend you guys dive in and check it out. And of course, you can use the target to see where you're hitting those levels. Are you hitting it there? Is it happening too early? You know, dive in, adjust your compression and such along the way, your limiter and so forth, to get a truer idea of what is really happening in your mix, right? Compress your audio as needed to retain a good dynamic range and a good maximum volume, right? Trust your ears in the end, of course, guys, right? You want to make sure you export stuff at high quality files, analyze it like that, high quality AIFF or WAV, for example. Listen to your music at super low levels to check that the important elements are balanced, right? Loudness can really stop us kind of by compressing, limiting what we can hear. Try it super low, see what it's like. Take off your headphones and put them on the table and listen to how it sounds coming out of the headphones, just like that, right? And of course, always reference your mixes in stereo as well as mono all the time, like throughout the process, because your stereo mix is what your headphones are good for. Even though it's not real stereo in headphones, at least you can get your separation in your space, in your room. You can kind of tap into those with headphones, right? And your volume, your levels. And then of course for mono, you're looking at more frequency, okay? And the center focus, your mid-side processing. So use the two to create a good harmony. I guess three, more like speakers, stereo speakers, headphones, which is kind of not real stereo, and then a mono speaker. You should be good. All of us should be really good with this. And then the analyzer and some compressors. I mean, that's kind of all we need, dare I say, right? Of course, you can use some separation and some spacer, but for now, those are some really good tools, right? And I've said this before, it's better to be turned down. Oh my gosh. It's better to be turned up, pardon me, than turned down. Again, I'm going to say that again. Trust your ears, but make sure you think about it like this. Your music is coming through a streaming service. I'd rather people have to turn me up than to have to turn me down, right, guys? Thanks for checking this one out. As usual, guys, Justin Blends winning with Blends, doing again. Leave a comment, leave some feedback in the comment section, and as well, join the Discord group. Why not, right? Let us know, like, how you've been doing with your productions over, since we've met and since the community's been developing. Let us witness your growth, guys. Share your production with the community here, and like I always say, let's win together. So watch this video on mixing in headphones for some really useful tips. All right, guys, until next time, take it easy.